Where's your brother? Is he not I think oh, he lives 5 minutes from here. I'm not even joking. He does, no one is closer than he does. You know, this is for last verse. So just take it easy. I have like he's taking the water. You want water?
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for attending tonight's program. Inshallah, we will begin from with Quran recitation by Brother Ali Abbas. So please welcome him with a loud salawat. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام را تلك آيات الكتاب المبين إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. إذ قال يوسف لأبيه يا أبت إني رأيت 11 كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين. قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو مبين. وكذلك يجتبيك ربك ويعلمك من تأويل الأحاديث ويتم نعمته عليك وعلى آل يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق إن ربك عليم حكيم. لقد كان في يوسف وإخوته آيات للسائلين إذ قالوا ليوسف وأخوه أحب إلى أبينا منا ونحن عصبة إن أبانا لفي ضلال مبين. اقتلوا يوسف واطرحوه أرضا يخل لكم وجه أبيكم وتكونوا من بعده قوما صالحين. قال قائل منهم لا تقتلوا يوسف وألقوه في غيابة الجب يلتقط معه السيارة إن كنتم فاعلين. قالوا يا أبانا ما لك لا تأمنا على يوسف وإنا له لناصحون.
الذئب ونحن عصبة إنا إذا لخاسرون فلما ذهبوا به أجمعوا يجعلوه في غيابة الجب في الجب وأوحينا إليه لتنبئنهم بأمرهم هذا وهم لا يشعرون وجاءوا أباهم عشاء يبكون قالوا يا أبانا إنا ذهبنا نستبق وتركنا يوسف عند متاعنا فأكله الذئب وما أنتم بمؤمن لنا ولو كنا صادقين وجاءوا على قميصه بدم كذب قال بل سولت لكم أنفسكم أمرا فصبر جميل والله المستعان على ما تصفون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsantum ay Abbas, thank you again for that beautiful Quran recitation. And thank you to all of you for attending tonight's program as we commemorate the unfortunate wafat of Imam Musa Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Before we begin though, portion of that form you'll see we don't focus on his birth. But the story of his birth was something very peculiar to me. If you guys notice the names of the Imams, there's a lot of repetition in names. We have Ali that's repeated, we have Muhammad that's repeated, we have Hassan that's repeated, but there's only one Imam that's named after a prophet, and that's Imam Musa Al-Kadhim. So when I was researching his birth, the story of his birth is he was born in a little town, a little village where the sixth Imam owned a property just outside of the city of Medina. And on the day of his birth, he was sitting with some companions, they were eating, they were having breakfast, and somebody comes running to the Imam and tells the Imam, your wife is calling you. Your wife is calling you, she's about to give birth. So the Imam excused himself from his companions, went to his wife. He comes back with a big smile on his face. So his companion said, what happened? Why do you have the smile? He says, Allah has blessed me with the greatest of blessings. I was blessed with a son, and his face resembles the face of Musa. So I've named him Musa. This is why Imam Musa Al-Kadhim has a different name than other Imams. It's not a name that's repeated, and he's the only Imam that is named after a prophet. So during his young childhood, the Imam lived in a period of great political transition. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, but there's a lot of intricacies in it. The political situation, you guys might understand, there was an Umayyad dynasty, okay? They were the ones who were in charge. They were the caliphs of the region. And during the life of the seventh Imam, when he was probably about 4 years old, around that time, there was a big power struggle. And the Abbasid dynasty started. And these new rulers, these new caliphs, were from the family of the Prophet as well. They were the cousins of the Imams. But they had a lot of hatred towards the Imams and the family of the Prophet as well. So the Abbasid Caliphate started during the time where the Imam was very young. And the Abbasid Caliphs were amongst the meanest towards the Ahlul Bayt that you could think of. During the Umayyad dynasty, we know that the name of Imam Ali was cursed, right? They used to curse Imam Ali. But they used to outwardly show their hatred towards the Ahlul Bayt. Everyone knew. If you look at the Umayyad Caliph, you knew that they didn't like the Ahlul Bayt. The Abbasids took a stance that was brilliant politically. They said they were going to avenge the tragedy of Karbala by taking power. And they would give power back to the family of the Prophet. But once they took this power over, they had no intentions of giving it back to the family. So the rulers of the time, during the time of the seventh Imam, were some of the meanest and some of the most ruthless dictators during the history of Islam. But nonetheless,
in the young life of the Imam, he taught us some very, very important lessons. When the Imam was about 5 years old, I don't know if you guys have heard the name Abu Hanifa. He's the Imam of the Hanafi fiqh of school of jurisprudence in the Sunni fiqh. He was one of the students of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq. Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam was an amazing, amazing teacher, okay? He started the institutions of universities and Islamic seminaries, and under his guidance, Muslims were learning everything. It was an age of enlightenment for Muslims. So he had a lot of students who would come and learn jurisprudence, learn Islamic law under him. And one of his students was Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa was an older man, and he comes to the house of the sixth Imam with a question. He has a question, he comes to the house, he knocks on the door, and the seventh Imam opens the door. He's about 5 years old. And at 5 years old, he opens the door and he says, "Oh, Abu Hanifa, how can I help you?" Abu Hanifa says, "Musa, I'm looking for your father. I have a question for him. I need him to answer for me." So Imam Musa al-Kadhim says, can I try to answer it? Little 5-year-old boy, can I try to answer it? Abu Hanifa goes, "You know what, let's give him a shot. I don't think he's going to be able to get this one, but let's see." So he asks the Imam, he says, when a person commits a sin, who's responsible for that action? When a person commits a sin, who's responsible for that action? So Imam Musa al-Kadhim says, there's 3 possibilities. The question that you're asking has 3 possible options. The first option is that when a person commits a sin, Allah is solely responsible for the sin. That's the first option. The second option is 50% Allah, 50% the person who did the action. So you're 50-50 at blame when an action is committed. Or the third option, the individual themselves holds 100% responsibility for what they do. Now, the reason why this question was really important is because at that time period, there was a big debate between 2 concepts. The concept of free will and the concept of predestination. The concept of free will states that every human being, all of us, we have an option to do whatever we do in our lives. If I want to wake up for Fajr, I can wake up. If I don't want to wake up, I don't wake up. That's my free will, my decision, my choice. Predestination is the concept that Allah is in charge of every action that we do. So if I wake up, it's because Allah woke me up. If I decide to sleep in, Allah let me sleep in. That concept was something that was debated by a lot of the scholars at that time. So that's why this question came about. So the Imam said 3 options. Option number 1, Allah is in charge of everything you do. But the problem with that is, if Allah is in charge of everything that you do, then Allah can't punish you for doing something wrong. And if He does, then Allah is not just. And that goes against the adalat of Allah. So Abu Hanifa said, yeah, that makes sense. What about the second option? 50-50. Allah is partially responsible, you're partially responsible. Allah puts you in a situation where you can commit a sin, and if you commit that sin, then it's also your fault. So the Imam says, in that option, if Allah is 50-50 partner, it's unjust for Him to punish you for an option that you didn't have. If Allah puts you in a position to do something wrong, and then you do that wrong thing, Allah's not being fair to you by putting you in that position. So Imam says, we believe in the third option. Every human being has an option to do anything that they want. And therefore, anything that you do, you are responsible for your actions. If I do something good, I'm responsible for it. If I do something wrong, I'm responsible for it. So Abu Hanifa took that answer. He says, okay, you know what? That makes sense. And he left. A few days later, Abu Hanifa was watching the same 5-year-old Imam praying Salah. And he sees him praying Salah, and then he comes running to the 6th Imam, and he tells Imam Jafar Sadiq, he says, your son doesn't pray Salah properly. You have to teach him how to pray. So Imam Jafar Sadiq says, what do you mean? How's he not praying properly? What did you see? Abu Hanifa says, I witnessed him standing in prayer, and when somebody walked by in front of him, he didn't put his arm out to stop him from walking by. Have you guys ever seen someone put their arm up to stop you from walking by while you're praying? So Abu Hanifa says to Imam Jafar, he says, please teach your son how to pray. So he says, oh Abu Hanifa, why don't you go teach him? You're his senior, why don't you go teach him how to pray properly? So Abu Hanifa says, okay, fine. He goes to the seventh Imam and he says, Musa, let me teach you. When someone walks by in front of you while you're praying, put your hand out to stop them from walking in between you and Allah. So Imam Musa Al-Kadhim says, you know, Abu Hanifa, in the Quran, Allah says, I am closer to you than your jugular vein. I don't think anybody can walk in between me and my jugular vein. Also, while I was praying Salah, I was so concentrated on my connection with Allah, I didn't even recognize somebody walked by in front of me. Abu Hanifa embarrassingly looked down and walked away. So even at a young age, the age of 5 years old, the Imam is showing us the extent of his knowledge, the all-encompassing knowledge that he had. And as he grew older, he was given 2 big titles. The first title he was given is what we refer to him as Al-Kadhim. You guys know what that means? Does anybody know what Al-Kadhim means? No? Does anybody want to take a guess?
Like someone that controls their anger.
Amazing. Somebody that controls their anger. Absolutely. He was known to be somebody that would control his anger. How many of us, all honesty, don't put your hands up. Put your hands up on the inside. Or just think to yourself, how many of us have problems with anger? How many of us get angry very quickly? Especially at the people that we're closest to. I can see the faces, and I know some of you guys. I know that when you have a sibling who's bothering you, that anger like that. Or if a parent tells you to do something that you don't want to do, that anger like that. It's okay, but we need to work on it. Imam Musa Al-Kadhim was somebody who used to work on his anger. And he was known to be very, very, very controlled in his emotions. One day, he was walking with a group of companions, a group of his friends, and as they're walking, a man comes up to him and starts cursing at him. Starts cursing at him, cursing his father. So his boys were with him, and his boys are like, okay, let's go. Let's grab this guy, let's beat him down. Imam's like, calm down, calm down. The next day, this guy's there, he's yelling and cursing at the Imam again. His companions are like, let's do something about this. This guy's just every day, he's out here, he's yelling at you, he's cursing at you, let's do something. The Imam says, no, it's okay, calm down, calm down. Third day, same thing. This man would constantly swear at the Imam, curse the Imam, yell at the Imam, and his companions used to tell him, let's do something. So one day the Imam says, okay, what would you do? What do you guys want to do to this man? He's here, he's cursing, what do you want to do? One of his companions said, we should take him, we should beat him up. Another one said, we should take everything that he owns from him and not give it back. Another companion said, we should try to just maybe kill him. So the Imam says, okay, calm down. This is what you guys think? Give me one day. Let me try one thing. So they said, okay, fine. So the Imam asked around and he said, where's this man? So somebody said, he's in his garden. He's got a garden, he's got a field that he tends to. He's working in his garden. So the Imam goes to the garden. The Imam walks into the garden. The man sees the Imam walking and he starts yelling. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Look at you. You walked into my garden, you've ruined it already. The Imam says to him, I'm sorry. How much did you spend on your garden this year? The man said, I spent 100 dinars. The Imam says, how much do you expect to receive from this garden this year? How much do you think it's going to generate you? So he says, 200 dinars. The Imam pulls out a pouch and gives it to the man. He says, here you go. The man opens this pouch up, he looks inside, he counts the money, 300 dinars. The man says to him, I've been cursing you, swearing at you, yelling at you, cursing at your parents, and you've responded with kindness. Why? Why? The Imam says, us from the family of the Ahlul Bayt don't only preach akhlaq, we practice it. We don't only tell other people how to act. We don't tell you to control your anger, but meanwhile I can get angry. I don't tell you to pray and I don't pray. The Imam says, we do everything that we tell others to do. So my akhlaq is, I'm going to be humble and nice to you, even if you're yelling at me. It's a direct reflection of our Holy Prophet. Think back to the days of early Islam, when the Prophet used to go around propagating the message of Islam, telling people there's only one God, and people would throw garbage at him. Telling people, don't bury your daughters, and they throw rocks at him. This same message that the Prophet was preaching, the same actions that the Prophet had, when people used to dump garbage at him, you guys know the story? The woman who used to dump garbage on the Prophet's head, every day he would walk down to go pray his salah, and as he's walking, she would dump garbage out her window until the one day she didn't. The day that she didn't, the Prophet, what did he do? Did he say, Ya Allah, thank you so much, today I don't have garbage on my head? What did he do? Ya Allah, maybe this lady's croaked, I don't need to worry about the garbage anymore? What did he do? He found out that she's sick. He went and he got food, went to her house and gave her food, and said, I hope you feel better. That was the akhlaq of the Prophet. And our Imam is showing us the same akhlaq. Have you guys ever heard the anecdote, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar? No, you guys have never heard that? Maybe eventually you will. But the concept is, you can change people's opinions by being nice to them more than by being rude to them. People respond to kindness more than they respond to threats, right? There's a classic conditioning theory, it's called the carrot and the stick method. If you have a donkey, okay, you're sitting on the donkey, you want the donkey to go forward, you have two options. First option is you dangle some food in front of it, a carrot, and the donkey's trying to chase that carrot so it keeps going straight. So you keep putting the carrot further and further, or you take a stick and you whip the donkey, right? Those are two options. The Imams are teaching us that sometimes being kind is the option to do. You don't need to always be angry. You don't need to always fight. Respond with kindness. This man had a complete change of heart. The next day when the Imam is walking with his same companions, the companions who were telling the Imam to kill this man the day earlier, today this man comes running and he sends the loudest salams on the Imam. And he says to him, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? Thank you so much. The companions are in shock. They're like, 24 hours ago, this guy was cursing at you. Today, this guy loves you. What's happened? The Imam says, do you see the difference in how you would interact with someone versus how I would interact with someone? This is the difference. So Al-Kadhim, one of his titles. Another one of his titles is Bab al-Hawa'ij. Who knows what that means?
Something to do with mercy.
Something to do with mercy? Close. Very close. Another one?
Like the door of mercy.
The door of mercy? Yeah, that's very good. Door of mercy, or a door for, he was known as a door for those who are in need. If someone is in need, if someone needed something, they would go to him. There's narrations, guys, these narrations shook me. There are narrations that say if Imam Musa Al-Kadhim helped a believer, anybody that he helped, that person would never be poor again. That person would never require somebody else's assistance again. That's the extent of the help that he would give them. He was known that if you needed something, you went to him, you asked for something, saying, please help me, you would never need help from anybody else ever again. That's the extent the Imam would help you. In fact, he was also known as someone who could cure those who were sick. Those who were sick would come to him and pray to him, ask him for prayers. When he would pray for them, their sicknesses would be cured. This is the seventh Imam. Very quietly would do all of these kinds of things. So during the life of the seventh Imam, when his father passed away, when his father was martyred, the Imam was 20 years old. And at the time, Mansur was the caliph. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the name. But the caliph, his name was Mansur, and he hated the Imams. And he had the idea, he said, when the Imams, before they get too powerful, before they start to build their own following, we have to kill them. So what he knew, the sixth Imam would leave in his will who the next Imam would be. So he told his governor of Medina, he said, I want you to go get the will of Imam Ja'far Sadiq and find out who the next person to follow. Whoever Imam Ja'far Sadiq says you should follow, get that person and kill them. Get that person and kill them. So the governor at the time, his name was Suleiman. Suleiman went and he got the will of the 60 Imam. And he gets the will and he's like, okay, let me check. Let me check who's next in line. Whoever's next in line, I gotta take them and I gotta kill them. When he opens the will, he gets shocked. The 60 Imam knew what was going on. So the 60 Imam in his will wrote, after me, there are 5 people. 5 people. Mansur, Suleiman, Hakima, Abdullah, and Musa. Follow those 5. So Suleiman gets scared. He's like, wait a minute, I'm on this list. I was just told by the caliph to behead whoever's on the list. What do I do? And the caliph's on this list. Can I go and behead him? So he writes back to Mansur and he says, oh caliph, I really wish I could do what you asked me to do, but I can't do it, man. I'm sorry. So Mansur goes, what are you talking about? Why can't you do this? I've given you direct instructions. Find who's on that list. Kill that person. So Suleiman says, you're on this list. I'm on this list. We don't know what to do. So Mansur says, okay, you know what? Let's let it go. Because if I behead you, I need to get myself beheaded as well. If I behead Musa, I'm going to have to behead the rest of them. So we're going to have to let this go. And thus, the imamate of the 7th Imam started. And he was allowed to practice. But that time of peace was very little. Very, very little. The Imam was tortured and imprisoned for majority of his imamate. Some of the scholars say the first period of ghaiba that the Shias ever experienced was during the time of Imam Musa Al-Kadhim. Do you guys know what ghaiba means? Yeah.
Like hiding.
Hiding, occultation, which means we're removed from our Imam, right? Right now, for example, we have our living Imam, but he's away from us. We can't see him, we can't speak to him. At the time of the 7th Imam, the condition was similar. Because the Imam was kept away, he was thrown into prisons. He used to be moved from prison to prison to prison and tortured within his prisons. You know, recently I saw some videos of the prison cells that the Imam was kept in. And if you look at these videos, it's not a prison. Think about a hole. You dig a hole in the ground and then you throw somebody in that hole. That's what it was. So the Imam used to be put into prisons constantly. And he was being tortured constantly. Why? Because the caliphs at the time did not like him. They knew and they didn't want the message of the Imams to be propagated, to be pushed out towards other people. So during the time of the 7th Imam, he lived under the rule of multiple caliphs. The first one we said was Mansur. After Mansur, there was a caliph Al-Hadi. During the rule of Al-Hadi was a big battle. Take this note. There was a big battle, and that battle was the Battle of Faq. Imam Ali Rada says, if it wasn't for the tragedy of Karbala, the biggest tragedy to befall the Ahl al-Bayt was the Battle of Faq. It was a battle in which multiples of the family of the Holy Prophet were martyred. They were killed, they were slaughtered, just for being Shias. In fact, during the time of Al-Hadi, if you were a Shia, every morning you used to have to go to the palace, to the governor, and you have to say, this is my name, this is where I live. And every night you'd have to come back and say, this is my name, this is where I live. And if I'm a Shia and you're a Shia, I would be in charge of you. If you didn't show up, I used to get whipped. They would whip them. You know, I always thought that the generation that we live in today is probably the hardest to not commit a sin. Because it's so easy for us to fall into the temptation of sin. With the way media is, with the educational system, with the fact that we live in the West, I always thought this was the most difficult time. With the fact that we're away from our Imam, I thought this was the most difficult time. Then when you look at the history of what the followers of some of our Imams went through, you realize we're blessed. How many of us have ever had the thought that I wish I was at the time of the Prophet, or I wish I was at the time of the Imam, or I wish I was at the time of Imam Hussain? I would have stood by his side. I wish I was at the time of Imam Jafar Sadiq. I would have stood by his side. Imam Musa Al-Kadhim, I would have stood by their side. How many of us have had these thoughts in our head at some point in our lives? I know I have. But now thinking about it, I don't know if I would have been able to stand by their side. Can you imagine every day, it doesn't matter if you're a boy, girl, old, young, you need to go and you need to write down who you are. You need to check in to the governor's office just so they know where you are and what you're up to. Just so they know every Shia, what are they doing? Where are they? And if you don't show up and I'm your friend and I've signed on for you, then I get punished. This is the conditions that the Shias used to live in. In fact, they got so bad, they hated the Shias so much after this tragedy, after they killed hundreds from the family of the Holy Prophet, they rounded up a whole bunch more and they brought them to the palace. And there's two incidences that I'm going to tell you, and they're extremely sad. One instance is actually a story. A man was, during the month of Ramadan, he was at his house. He called a friend of his over and he said, come over to my house. So when the friend comes to his house, he's sitting there, the man is sitting in his house and he's drinking and he's eating. And the friend says, you know it's the month of Ramadan, right? He says, yeah, I know. The friend says, oh, are you sick? Are you not fasting today because you're sick? He says, no, I'm not sick. So he goes, why aren't you fasting? He says, because I know I'm going to hell. The friend says, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Why? The man says, I was called by the Caliph and he asked me a question. And he said, how much do you pledge allegiance to me? So the man said, I responded with, all the wealth that I have is yours. The Caliph said, that's not good enough. So the man says, I pledge my life and the life of my children to you. The Caliph said, that's not good enough. So the man says, I will give you my religion. The Caliph says, yes, that's what I want. So he says, okay, what do I do? So he says, I'm going to send you to this place. When I send you there, do exactly as I say. The man said, okay, and he goes. And he goes to this house, he goes to this not house, almost like a palace. And in this palace, there's 3 rooms. And in the first room, there's 20 youth. In the second room, there's 20 middle-aged people. And in the third room, there's 20 elders. So the man says, what am I doing here? So the guards that were standing there say, these are all from the lineage of Muhammad and Ali. These are all the family of Ali. Here's a sword. Your job, kill all of them. The man said, I did it. And after that day, I knew I would never be able to go to heaven. So the friend that was sitting there listening to this was shocked. He says, what do I do? He goes to the 7th Imam and he tells the 7th Imam, he says, this is what happened. You know what the Imam responds? The Imam responds, and this is a lesson for all of us. The Imam responds, what he did was horrible, horrendous. But the fact that he lost faith in Allah and says he would never be forgiven is a bigger sin than the murder of those 60 people. The sin of losing faith in Allah, feeling that you're beyond, you're out of the realm of compassion of Allah, that you can never be forgiven by Allah, was a larger sin than that murder of 60 people. That's who our Imam is. We have to remember these lessons from the life of the Imams, and we need to implement them into our own lives. Yeah? A lot of times, I get faced with the question of, I've done this, how can I ever be forgiven? You will be forgiven. Don't lose that connection with Allah. Don't lose hope in Allah. Allah is there for us always, whether we believe it or not. If you think you've done something wrong and you truly repent for what you've done, Allah is there for us. Our Imam has told us this. All of our Imams have told us this. you're not beyond salvation. None of you will ever be beyond salvation. Don't lose faith. So that's the first tragedy. Yeah, the first tragedy. The second tragedy was after the Battle of Fa. You know, after the Battle of Karbala, the family of the Imam, of Imam Hussain, they were taken as slaves. They were thrown into prison. They were tortured. Some of them died. Some of them got to go home. In the Battle of Fa, the survivors that were taken, all of them were killed by Al-Hadi. He killed all of them. And then he said, this is all because of Musa Al-Kadhim, that people revolted against me. And he says, today I'm going to go get revenge on him. So one of the Imam's companions comes to him and says, Al-Hadi's going to come. He's coming after you. Imam says, don't worry. Let me just go perform salah and I'll think of something. Imam goes and performs salah. And after salah, he recites this beautiful dua, Dua Joshan Saghir. Have you guys heard of it? Yeah? You know, we have Dua Joshan Kabir that was given as a gift to the Prophet as well. Dua Joshan Saghir was given, not given, but it was recited by Imam Al-Kadhim in a time where he thought he was going to be killed. After reciting Dua Joshan Saghir, he comes back and he tells his companion, don't worry, Allah will take care of it. Shortly after that, they get the news that Al-Hadi has died. So the Imam's life was saved. Now after Al-Hadi, listen to these Abbasid caliphs, okay? We have Mansur. Mansur, the way he got into power, his father was in charge. His father was a caliph. Mansur wanted power so badly, you know what he did? His father loved money. So his father used to have a big room with all of his money in it. And he used to go every day and count his money. You guys know Scrooge McDuck? Yeah? Scrooge likes to swim in his money or count his money the same way. He used to go and he used to count his money every day, play with his coins. So as he's playing with his coins, Mansur knew, if he's in that room, I'm just going to lock the room and leave him in there. So as he went to go count his money, Mansur locks the room and he leaves his dad in there, and his dad dies because of thirst and starvation. He was locked into that room. Mansur came into power. Al-Hadi is Mansur's son. Kills his dad, takes power. Then Al-Mahdi kills Al-Hadi, their brothers. Kills him, takes power. This is how the cycle went. They would not, if they were killing each other, imagine what they did to the family of the Imams. So the Imam's living during this time. And then he comes to the worst of them, Harun Rashid. Harun, when he takes power, doesn't spare the Imam. He takes the Imam and he throws him into prison. And he tells the wardens of his prisons, torture this man. The Imam would be in prisons, and each prison cell that he would go to would get smaller and smaller. But what happens? It's the Imam. The first prison he goes to, the man in charge of the prison decides this man is too much, and he becomes a Shia and a follower of the Imam. So Harun goes, oh man, what am I going to do? Moves the Imam again. And the Imam keeps spreading the message. People start converting and following the Imam's message. So Harun is left with no choice. He says, I'm going to take the Imam and I'm going to put him in the smallest and the worst of prisons. The prison cell was so small that the Imam only had enough room to stand in it. Standing. In fact, they would say that one man would come and they would look at the prison, and the warden of the prison would say, look out at the prison and tell me what you see. The man says, I see somebody has left their clothes lying on the ground of the prison. The man says, no, that's Musa Al-Kadhim. He's always in sujood. When he was thrown into prison, you know what the Imam said? The Imam says, oh Allah, I thank you. I've asked for it to be put in a place where if I put you, forget about prison. If you get grounded and you get sent to your room and you don't have a TV or a phone with you, how angry are you? Or when the internet cuts out and it's out for like 15 minutes, I know people are screaming at the top of their lungs, right? The power goes out, what do? You need to talk to people around you. We freak out. The Imam says, thank you for the opportunity, Allah, to worship you with no distractions. That was the Imam. That's Imam Musa Al-Kadhim. That's the dedication and the devotion. To the point that everyone who would come into contact with him when he was in prison would decide to follow him. There's a beautiful narration of the beautiful story, right? Where Harun tried to trick the Imam to doing something wrong. And he sent a lady into the prison cell of the Imam. And they said, you know what? The Imam is by himself. Maybe he'll do something haram. When they come back later on to check on the Imam, they see the Imam is doing salah and the lady is behind him following him in salah. That's the Imam. Even if there's nobody around, nobody to see you, they never gave into the sin of temptation. They stayed strong in their values. So the Imam was in prison. Some narrations say 7 years, some say 11, some say up to 15 years he was in prison. And these prisons, tiny, tiny, tiny. The last prison that he was in, there's one narration that I read that said it was a hole in the ground. There was a well, and at the bottom of the well, they dug a hole in the ground. And they put the Imam into that tiny hole, under a well. It was so dark and so low that the Imam would not be able to get air. And he would have to try to climb up to the top, at least to get some air. And there was a guard standing at the top, whose orders were, every time the Imam climbs up, kick him back down. That was the condition the Imam was kept in, where he would not even be able to breathe in the condition he was in. And this is an Imam that we've forgotten. And it hurts that I spent my entire life not knowing these narrations of the Imam. It's our job, all of our job, to know and understand who these Imams are, and to make sure that we emulate them in everything that we do, and make sure that we don't neglect them the way that we have. And this is a reminder to me, not to all of you. I need to do a better job, and I need to follow my Imams in a better way, and I need to learn about them, because the torture that Imam Musa Al-Kadhim went through is the Imams after him has said no Imam has faced that level of torture. Imam Hussain, we talk about all the time, he went through so much. Imam Al-Kadhim, what happened to him? We forgot. His imamate lasted for a period of 35 years. He became an imam at 20, and he was martyred at 55. 35 years he was our imam. How many stories do we know about his life? Very few, if any of us. So I beg all of you, please, please, please do not neglect the imams anymore. Learn the lessons from their lives. Learn about all of those that came before us that allowed us to be here in Bishia today. When we're talking about those who were killed in these multiple battles of Islam, it was for us to be able to practice our religion today. And we forgot all of them. We don't remember any of them. We didn't even know this occurred. And the biggest lesson that all of us will take away today is never lose hope in the forgiveness of Allah. Whatever we've done, whatever you do, if you truly, sincerely ask for forgiveness, Allah will never not respond to you. Inshallah, I think I'm done for now. Awesome. Do you want to do the question answer now or after? After. Okay, inshallah. Can we have a please a loud salawat? Allah Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Ahsantum, thank you so much for that. I think you could have done a better job than that. Amazing, mashallah. And yes, we do need to do a better job at remembering all the imams, not just the ones, of course, that we know, of course, we still remember them. Just a few announcements before we go. Quickly, I want to mention that next Saturday, similar to today in this place downstairs, there will be a sisters only game night. So be sure to attend that. More details on WhatsApp and Instagram. Again, sisters game night only, 4 p.m. February 1st, right here at downstairs. And the second thing is for the Q&A. We will have a Q&A today, but it will be after dinner. So just make sure you're not to leave home. You guys don't want to miss it. But with that, thank you everyone for attending, and hope to see you back here shortly after dinner. And you may now go upstairs after a loud salawat. And don't forget to pack the chairs as well, or we'll keep the chairs, yeah? Keep it for now, so you can leave upstairs momentarily, right now. Thank you. Salawat. Allah.